Every capitalist is always trying to either make more money or survive competitively by saving on his labor costs. But here comes the contradiction. If all capitalists are reducing the number of workers they pay or reducing the pay they give to their workers, what will result is that the working people have less and less money. And if they have less and less money, they can't buy what the capitalists are producing to sell. The solution was credit. We loaded the world up. House credit, that's your mortgage. Car payment credit, nobody buys a car except by paying out. Credit cards, which didn't exist before the 1970s for anything but traveling businessmen, and only a small number of them. And then when that was not enough, we loaded up, for the first time in American history, an entire generation of students who can't get a degree without loading up with tens of thousands of dollars of debt. We kept the system going. People could buy stuff even though their wages didn't pay for it by borrowing. And in 2008, the predictable happened.
So, as Richard Wolff is pointing out here, it really does seem like capitalism is reaching its end. But what really does this mean, and how did we get here? Now, you see, the harsh reality about capitalism is that it really doesn't work because every single person in the chain is looking to exploit you, and every single one of the industries that are busy trying to exploit you want to exploit you to the maximum extent. So, let's look at this for example. If you are a worker, your employer wants to squeeze out every single dollar that you are worth. Now, of course, they have to pay you some wages, otherwise you wouldn't work there, so they have to concede a little bit to you. But then there's the next layer, where there's your landlord. Your landlord wants to squeeze out every single dollar that you are worth. Every single penny that you own, your landlord would gladly take from you in order to put into their bank account. Unfortunately for them, they can't do that because you always have the choice of moving. That is, of course, until maybe one or two investment companies buy up all the property in the country, but that hasn't happened yet. So the degree to which they can exploit you is somewhat limited, but they have a lot more power than you realize because usually if you're living in any particular town, there's usually only a handful of landlords in that town. And so they have pretty limited competition, and they're pretty good at making sure that the rents are as high as they feasibly can be. But then you go to the next industry, like the health insurance industry, for example. Now, the health insurance industry really gets you because they know that they can charge you for every single penny that you're worth even more, and they can put you in debt and make money off of the financing of that debt. They know this because if you don't have access to healthcare, then how are you supposed to be alive? But here's where the problem is. If you're a worker and you are getting exploited by all of these different industries all at once, and they're trying to squeeze out every single penny that you're worth, the reality is the cost of everything becomes so high that you can't really afford anything. And if working class people do not have the ability to afford anything around them, especially if they are not able to afford all of the excess consumer products that capitalism depends on selling, well, then the entire system falls apart. And as Richard Wolff stated, obviously we get into a situation where we have ballooning credit that's supposed to make up for that, but that credit can only go so far, and that credit serves to accelerate inflation. So if we have all of these things stacked on top of each other, we are really at a breaking point. Now, there are tons and tons of solutions that have been done in the past, but every single one of the solutions that have worked in the past would be something that people in Washington, by and large, have categorically disregarded and refused to accept as a violation of their sort of neoliberal orthodoxy. Why is that? Well, because one obvious answer is to adopt a more socialist economy. It would be to replace these businesses with worker cooperatives. It would be to nationalize major industries that are necessary for the production of like critical goods or play a significant role in, infrastructure and stuff like that. That would mean radically changing who has ownership over the economy. It would require things like land reforms, like giving tenants ownership of the apartment buildings that they live in, giving farmers ownership of the land that they work. And they don't want to do that because obviously that challenges their donors. But then even more mild reforms, things like a debt jubilee, for example, run up against that orthodoxy because, of course, despite the fact that under traditional capitalist economic theory, the interest rates on loans are there to pay for the risk of default, we live in a system that really doesn't like to let people default on their loans. It turns out that big banks and even small payday lenders really don't like the idea of people being able to get out of debt through bankruptcy. And with that as a reality, our bankruptcy laws make it incredibly difficult for people to actually go bankrupt and default on their debts. So they won't even give working class people an inch, despite the fact that there's a long historical precedent that shows that a debt jubilee would make a huge difference and sort of reset the economy. They literally cannot even allow any reforms to be put in place that would allow capitalism to operate further, because if they did that, it would allow working class people to realize that there are options outside of capitalism. When faced with the choice of doing something that would extend the shelf life of capitalism or doing something that makes it seem like capitalism is the only option, they will always choose the latter. They would prefer that people think that capitalism is the only way.
Hey, so you're the first time buyer?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. You're coming at a horrible time. America has a massive housing shortage and almost none are on sale.
I'm desperate.
Perfect. So you waived your right to inspection, right?
Of course.
And you can make your offer all cash.
Well, probably not.
All right. And the seller still wants to be able to use the kitchen whenever they want?
I thought that was really good. And one of the most important things about this clip, and also just to pay attention to what's going on in the housing market right now, is that there's been all this talk about the recovery. You know, Biden got in office and he brought us back and look at these gains. And even under the Trump presidency, they were, the economy's so splendid. Under the Obama presidency, the economy, it's so great. It's so splendid. We rose it so much from the George W. Bush crash. But the reality is this. The reality is the housing market. The reality is wages. The reality is that everybody's still broke for the most part. The reality is that people are still drowning in debt. The reality is that millennials have faced 2 recessions. And the reality is that the, one that we kind of, put a little Band-Aids over with the little rescue package, all the stuff that happened with COVID. No. The crash hasn't even started yet.
And how do you feel about sleeping on the roof? All the competitive buyers are willing to sleep on the roof.
I'm not planning on sleeping.
Knew I liked you. Oh, the price went up $100,000 over asking just while we were talking.
I can't afford that.
Does it matter?
Nope.
And this is, again, a key example of one of the things that millennials and Gen Z face is that we're always being told we're just simply financially irresponsible. Now, it's true that irresponsibility often comes with youth. However, when generations like baby boomers and older generations, when they were our age, when they were in their 20s, when they were in their 30s, everything was cheaper. The dollar went further. They were able to build wealth. And they act like, if you just stop buying avocado toast and you stop getting coffee from Starbucks in the morning, might take 5 or 6 months, but after that, that'll stack up and then you'll be able to buy a house. Yeah, of course. But, again, the reality is that the economy really hasn't ever recovered. From 2008, it really hasn't. I mean, sure, people are back in work and credit has, exploded, but the real economy has not improved.
Mind if I take your hand? Agent's fate.
Not at all.
Awesome. Oh, we just sold the house to someone else.
Sorry about that.
And the harsh truth is that we can't just bail ourselves out every time the economy has a major crash. The major crash that happened in 2008, we run into something like that again. We're not just going to be able to flood the markets once again. We just did that for COVID. We just flooded the markets with more fiat currency. We can't just continuously do that. We can't just continuously bail out banks. We have to actually do something about our economic problems. I mean, look at this. Millennials, Gen Z, we're not buying homes. We're not starting families. And if we do start families, it's much later. The nuclear family. One of the biggest reasons the nuclear family structure isn't held together is because people can't afford to start families. You know what I'm saying? So literally the very fabric of this nation is falling apart, much of it due to economic problems. And this right here is why political involvement is so important. Just look at you. Go try to buy a house. Just go try.